Do the legendary Grim Reaper or angels really exist? At the end of 2016, 83-year-old Grandpa was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. His grandson Mr. W rushed back home to see him. Father and aunt took turns caring for Grandpa day and night. But they were also getting on in years and looked haggard when Mr. W saw them. As the grandson, Mr. W had to share their burden, especially for the grandfather who doted on him most. So Mr. W became the main family member to stay by Grandpa's hospital bed. Too weak for chemotherapy, Grandpa could only take medication for conservative treatment. He spent over half of each 24-hour day unconscious, occasionally lucid to chat with Mr. W about past stories. Soon it was 2017. After the new year, Grandpa deteriorated until, in the week before he passed, his condition suddenly improved. His spirit rallied, at times abruptly calling Mr. W's father over to speak privately and instructing him on certain matters. Most bizarrely, he would even ask Mr. W to buy him a roasted chicken to eat. Seeing Grandpa's state, Mr. W wondered if he was recovering. But the family only grew sadder, because it's common for people near death to have periods of illusory improvement before the end, a sign of impending doom. The day before Grandpa's passing, while washing hands in the bathroom, Mr. W suddenly heard Grandpa murmuring as if conversing with someone. Assuming it was his father in the room, Mr. W came out to see no one there at all. Mr. W figured he had misheard. That night, Grandpa said he wanted to eat a dish Grandma used to make. After it was prepared, Mr. W brought some over. Grandpa ate with relish, then went to sleep, not speaking with Mr. W, only gripping his hand tightly while sleeping. Mr. W stayed up all night holding his hand, reminiscing about memories with Grandpa. Near dawn, Grandpa suddenly started talking, waving his hands in the air as if resisting something. Mr. W panicked, thinking Grandpa was uncomfortable. He urgently tried to rouse him and asked if he should call the doctor. But Grandpa had a dazed expression and then said no need, telling Mr. W that the past few days someone had been staring at him in the room, occasionally saying, "Come with me, you don't have long left." Hearing this, Mr. W's nose soured as tears streamed down uncontrollably. He figured Grandpa's illness must be causing hallucinations. At 6 a.m., Aunt came to care for Grandpa. Exhausted, Mr. W took a taxi home, showered and collapsed in bed but was completely unable to sleep. Some unconscious force seemed to prevent slumber, so he got up, put on a coat, and rushed back to the hospital. Aunt sat on the other side of the bed. Mr. W walked over and stood beside it. One of Grandpa's hands had an IV drip, the other grasping Mr. W's index finger. In that instant, Mr. W's heart wrenched as he shuddered with cold despite the room's heating. It was like falling into an ice cave, sudden, inexplicable terror with tears flowing freely. He told Aunt to get the doctor immediately. She was startled by his reaction, asking what was wrong, but how could he articulate this profound chill from his core that made his body tremble uncontrollably? It seemed Grandpa was failing. Hurry and call the doctor. After saying that, Mr. W had used up all his energy, unclear why he felt this way, as if an invisible power enveloped the room. Aunt hit the emergency button and ran for the doctor. Alone, Mr. W stood there, whether psychological or not, his body rigid, only able to hold Grandpa's hand. Some force seemed to restrain him from even bending down to embrace Grandpa. Then Grandpa started foaming at the mouth. The doctor arrived and immediately began resuscitation efforts, but Grandpa still passed away. Also at that moment, the unseen pressure constricting Mr. W vanished from the room. He froze, the people in the room disappearing until only he remained. Just then, he heard someone calling him from the door. It was Grandpa. Bewildered, Since Grandpa had just died before his eyes, how could he now be at the door? Beside him stood a man. But before Mr. W could react, Grandpa spoke, telling him not to miss him and to be happy every day forward. After saying this, Grandpa and the man disappeared in a flash of light. Mr. W tried to follow but couldn't move. Then he heard voices, "Are you okay? Wake up." He slowly opened his eyes to Aunt rousing him, saying he had fainted. The doctor determined it was from grief over his loss to Mr. W touched his damp cheeks, thinking he must have momentarily been unable to accept Grandpa's passing, imagining that scene. Still, he would recall it after, wondering who that man with Grandpa was and why only Grandpa could see him. Perhaps it really was Grandpa's hallucination. Or was what he saw also imaginary? The story ends here. Birth, aging, illness and death are facts of life, as Mr. W experienced. But was the one who took his grandfather truly an angel or the Grim Reaper? Please share your thoughts in the comments. See you next story.